and I am looking forward to this one. Uh, Jerry Jones and Mike McCarthy parted ways, in the contract negotiations, which stalled. And before we get into the topic, let's hear from Jerry Jones.
Mike McCarthy because he looks like a fucking pork chop. And I hate that big ass play call sheet he holds during games. We all know it's a Perkins menu. I'm not even sure we need a coach. Hell, maybe we already have a coach in mind. Maybe he's sitting right in front of you, half drunk on Johnny Walker Blue with only an Egg McMuffin in his belly and a pocket full of Dinger pills. Maybe he's 82 fucking years old and needs his ass wiped from time to time, depending on how much Salisbury steak he's ate. Look, I'm going to do things my way, and my way is fucking terrible. But if you don't like it, then tough titty said the kitty, but the milk kept coming. Listen, I'm never going to die, motherfuckers. I drink 8 ounces of hog's blood every day, and I'm a vampire feeding off mass disappointment. So learn how to accept meaningless primetime games forever. What I'm looking for in our next head coach is someone that values analytics and also someone that lets me take he and his wife to a Hojo's.
Yeah, Jerry Jones is acting wild there. Obviously, AI is what you would call that. But look, Zach, we might as well get into it. Did Jerry Jones make a mistake parting ways with Mike McCarthy? And obviously a follow-up question within the question, where do these parties go from here? And Zach, I would love to begin this one because to me, I think that Jerry Jones did make a mistake kinda in one way of mainly the timing of parting ways, right? To me, this is a timing thing. And look, we can call Mike McCarthy a con man, obviously, but he obviously has a great resume full of coaching experience. And with Mike Vrabel off the board and Bill Belichick off the board, I'm going to North Carolina, obviously. Jerry Jones lost on those guys that he could have interviewed. Even if Mike Vrabel was always going to New England, at least getting an interview with him, and you waited for, the contract negotiations to stall out before you start making that decision. And now missing out on some candidates, you can't interview certain coordinators that are in the playoffs right now, guys like Aaron Glenn, Ben Johnson, Joe Brady, and Kellen Moore. And that's obviously if you want to go in that direction, there's good options available in other areas that are not coaching right now in the playoffs currently or in the NFL currently, right? But the reality is, I just don't understand the timing of Jerry Jones and how he handles his business. He waited for Dak Prescott to be the most paid quarterback in the NFL, player in the NFL in general, and we all know he's overrated to an extent. So you allowed him to get the biggest contract in the NFL by waiting. You allowed CeeDee Lamb and that drama to bleed into the media to make a big situation out of nothing when you was going to pay him anyways, and you allowed that to progress into the season. You barely, at the midnight hour, took care of your guys, and now this is another example of that, negotiations, and then you decide that you want to move on from Mike, and now you miss out on some guys that you could have had. You could have had Bill Belichick, who has a relationship, obviously, with Jerry Jones, and yet you waited to this time to make that decision. And look, I think Mike McCarthy did enough to save his job after that Tampa Bay game. I thought his team showed fight. But what I overlooked, Zach, remember we had that conversation about if we thought he saved his job after that game, we both agreed that he did. What we overlooked was that he was on an expiring contract. So not only was he auditioning to save his job, but he was auditioning to get an extension. So that was a thing that we overlooked. And obviously it became evident that the Cowboys and Jerry Jones didn't want to pay him what he was looking for. I'm hearing it was in terms of years. So obviously that was a sticking point. And this year was a bad year for the Cowboys. Let's call a spade a spade. So I think for me, Jerry Jones made a mistake based off the timing of the parting of ways. I don't disagree with parting of ways with Mike McCarthy, I'm not saying I agree with it. I'm not saying I disagree with it, but the timing to me is a little bit off, and that's typical Jerry Jones.
So I agree. I think the timing point is a good one. If you were going to do this, why wait? You literally had all season to make this decision, considering he didn't have a contract. But I think they made the right move not bringing him back. You couldn't bring him back because there's nothing different about the Cowboys now than there was 5 years ago when this guy took the job. I think we underrate the Cowboys in the last 20 years have been able to make the playoffs plenty of times. They did it a bunch with Jason Garrett. They've done it a bunch with Mike McCarthy. But the biggest reason why we clown and make fun of the Cowboys is because they're not able to win in the playoffs, and they haven't made an NFC championship game since 95. And Mike McCarthy was not going to be the coach to take them there. I even wonder if Dak Prescott never gets hurt, I don't think this is even a conversation. Like, the only reason why the conversation about possibly bringing Mike McCarthy back was because they overachieved a bit playing with Cooper Rush. And credit to him, his team didn't quit on him, but the Dallas Cowboys should be a team with higher expectations than that. They should be a team, especially considering the amount of money they're spending and the talent they have, this should be a team with legitimate Super Bowl aspirations. And the bottom line is they were never going to get to that Super Bowl with Mike McCarthy, so they had to make a change. Now it's all about hiring that right guy, and where do you go from here? And look, I'm just going to say it. From a pure entertainment standpoint, I would love to see them bring in Coach Prime, Deion Sanders. This is a guy that has done a pretty good job at Colorado. I think we forget Colorado was a joke, irrelevant program prior to him getting there, and he made them cool. He made them relevant again, bringing in some big-time talent. I do wonder, though, would that coaching style translate well to the NFL? I'm not confident. I think some players would want to play for him, others wouldn't. But I just feel like Jerry Jones, we know at this point, his number one priority is not winning. It's being in the news as much as possible and having people about his talking about his team as much as possible. And considering his age, if he wants to go out with a legitimate bang, that's the move to make. If your number one priority, like I think it is just being relevant, being in the news, having people talk about you. Like, I don't think it's a coincidence that Mike McCarthy, and it was announced him not coming back, it happened yesterday. So people could talk about it on halftime of Monday Night Football and in pregame of Monday Night Football. I don't think that's a coincidence. I think Jerry Jones did that to have people talking about it. We know this guy's number one priority is not winning. It's being relevant, and I think that's why the news dropped yesterday. So I would love to see Coach Prime. Who would I hire? I think Pete Carroll's a good hire. That's a guy that I think is still hungry to coach. I still think he can coach. And I think this Cowboys team needs a legitimate head coach to put them over the top. And that would be the guy I look at.
Yeah, I mean, look, to me, it's not only about finding a replacement coach, it's about having to rebuild the coaching staff. Mike Zimmer, there's a report that Mike Zimmer is thinking about retirement right now after the not firing, but parting the ways of Mike McCarthy. And Jerry Jones is going to have to find another yes man, which is why I think he will go the Sanders route, mainly because Sanders, has no pro coaching experience, only collegiate, and he played for the franchise. He's not going to challenge Jerry Jones' authority. He's going to bring the headlines that you described, and that's why I think there's a likelihood that he may go that route. And to me, I'm not sure if that equates to winning. And it just goes back to my point that I made about and this is a collaborative misunderstanding here between Jerry Jones and Bill Belichick. I think that if you know that you're not going to pay Mike McCarthy maybe the certain amount of years that he wants or whatever, maybe you do reach out to Bill Belichick's representatives and let him know that, there may be a job opening, but also you have to blame Bill Belichick because he jumped the gun. He rushed and took the North Carolina job because he felt that he wasn't going to get another job in the NFL. And you have to put a lot of that blame on Bill Belichick for jumping the gun. I think Bill Belichick made two terrible decisions in his career that has cost him, and that may be legacy defining or altering, should I say, which is allowing Tom Brady to go to Tampa Bay and winning a championship, and also taking this North Carolina gig in light of a potential vacancy that could be open that he could potentially go on to. We all know the Raiders fired their coach, Antonio Pierce. Tom Brady obviously has ties to Bill Belichick. There was a report that he wanted and met with Bill Belichick in regards to that, or talked with him. He could have had that gig. He could have had this gig. So I think Bill Belichick is the big loser here, jumping the gun, taking that North Carolina job. There's no evidence that he's going to be successful there, because this is not only a football related thing. Obviously, with college is recruiting, marketing, and NILs. And I just don't think that's for him. I think here's for him in the NFL, and he jumped the gun there. And Jerry Jones, on the other hand, he missed out on some interviews that he could potentially have already done. And now we have to wait, depending on where he wants to go. And that's the $1 million question. Where do he wants to go? And to me, that should be Pete Carroll, without a doubt. I think that's the way you go. A coach with experience, a coach that's a culture setter, and you go with him. But I don't know where he wants to go, because with Jerry Jones, as we all know, it's not only about football. So we'll see where he goes.
Going back to Belichick for a second, let me ask you this. Bill Belichick, we know he's arguably the greatest coach of all time. The other thing I think he's known for off the field is making cold-blooded decisions. We know what this guy did with the Jets. He was their coach for like a day, resigns via a napkin, a note on a napkin. We know that this guy was ruthless in cutting players, and not only just any players, but like big name players that you would not expect him to cut. How on brand for Belichick would it be for him to leave North Carolina before even coaching a game there? I'm not saying it's gonna happen, but I think it's at least on the table. And if I'm Jerry Jones, I'm trying whatever I can to tell him to get out of there and come coach the Dallas Cowboys.
I think it's on brand. I believe he would have to pay a $10 million buyout, something like that, to that extent. Obviously, I've been trying to follow some of the moves that he's making in North Carolina, and I've been seeing that I don't think he started building his team already. So I'm not sure if that has any correlation to him potentially, ditching North Carolina for the NFL. But from what I saw last night and read upon, I don't believe that he has fully assembled a team yet in North Carolina. And obviously, in college, you need a team. You need a recruiting team. You need a staff. You need a lot of things to be put in place for you to do your job as a collegiate coach. So he hasn't done that already. Like I said, I'm not here to speculate, but if he's going to coach in North Carolina, really and truly, in September, you would think that these decisions will be made sooner rather than later. So Zach, I think in closing for me, as far as Mike McCarthy, I want to look at it from his perspective, and where he should go from here, because I do think that he has a very good resume, and he has experience, and I do think there will be a franchise that may want to hire him. Look, he's not an innovator. Okay, he's old school, stubborn. Maybe there's a cap on the ceiling with him, but he's still a very good coach. Okay, look what Dak Prescott was able to do a season ago when he was healthy. He was an MVP caliber player. Look what happened with Rodgers. He won a championship. Did Rodgers win another championship since? No, he hasn't. So clearly, Mike McCarthy is a good coach. So there's going to be teams that are looking for gigs to fulfill right now. And to me, if I'm Chicago, I am listening and I am interviewing Mike McCarthy, and I'm considering highly Mike McCarthy. If I'm the Jaguars, I am highly considering Mike McCarthy. Those will be the two teams, and the Saints as well. But look, I don't know why he would want to take the Saints gig. So I'm just going to exclude them from the picture here. To me, the Bears, the Jaguars should be two teams that are highly interested in bringing in Mike McCarthy.
So I think the Jaguars fit makes more sense to me. I just got to be real. Like, I just don't think Mike McCarthy and Caleb Williams are a good fit for each other. Mike McCarthy's kind of a, mellowed down guy. I don't think he really is the type to get into his players' face and really hold them accountable. I feel like Caleb Williams needs an alpha personality to go along with him and not take any of his shit. And I said this last week. I think Todd Monken is the perfect fit for Chicago. an offensive mind that has proven he could go into a high-profile job and have success. If I'm the Bears, that's the guy I'm targeting. We know McCarthy and his past in Green Bay. Like, I don't think the Bears fans would be on board with it. I think Bears fans know the exact coach Mike McCarthy is, and I don't think that would be something that would end well. Jacksonville, that's a little bit more interesting to me because I kind of peg them as a team that would go after a lower profile candidate. I also think Mike McCarthy's a guy where he's not really trying to look for trouble. Like, he'll work with whoever. He's a nice guy. And maybe that's something Jacksonville tries to avoid, considering it just ended up really poorly with Doug Peterson. I just got to be honest with you, Will. Like, I'm not the biggest Mike McCarthy guy, and I'm not saying he's a bad coach, but I just think there are other better candidates out there. I'm not saying he's a bad coach, but I would really be in no rush to hire him if I was any of these teams. Maybe if I was the Saints, he could do some good work with Derek Carr, but I just think the Saints are in need of a full rebuild, and I think Aaron Glenn would be a better fit there, considering what he just did in Detroit. So maybe he gets a job, maybe he doesn't. All I'm saying is if I'm one of these teams, I'm in no major rush to hire him.
Look, this is my last point. Mike McCarthy reminds me, and Zach, if I need to be corrected here, if I'm talking out of line, feel free to correct me, right? Because I'm going out on a limb here. But Mike McCarthy reminds me of my team's head coach in basketball, Tom Thibodeau. They remind me of each other. Stubborn, old school, maybe a cap on where they can go as far as the pecking hierarchy, winning a championship. There's a cap, obviously. And yet you look at their resume, and it's some of the best resumes in the sports. Obviously in the NBA, Tom Thibodeau, obviously in the NFL, Mike McCarthy. Wherever they go, they win. Chicago, New York, win. In Mike McCarthy's case, Green Bay, Cowboys, win. And to me, I still think Mike McCarthy can offer a football team some value, whether that be the Bears, who, if you're going to hire somebody, you want to hire a coach that is going to implement a system for Caleb Williams. Mike McCarthy's system is known to be quarterback friendly. That's what I've heard. Very basic, almost like Cliff. It's very basic. I think that could work well with Caleb. Yeah, and obviously he has the experience edge over a guy like Tom Munkin and some of these other, X's and O's guys that we, want to hire. So I think for me, Mike McCarthy is an attractive option for a head coaching gig.
Well, let me ask you this, though. And when it comes to the comparison, I don't hate it. I just think Thibodeau's a better coach, despite McCarthy having a ring and him not. But what would the conversation around Mike McCarthy be if Dak Prescott never got hurt? Because I think we're forgetting just how bad this Cowboys team was playing and just how badly everyone wanted to run this guy out of town. I feel like we're giving Mike McCarthy some props because, okay, his starting quarterback got hurt and they played a lot better and his team didn't quit on him. I'll give you that. But this team had Super Bowl aspirations in the preseason and were a joke prior to Dak Prescott getting hurt. Their season fell apart. So I feel like if Dak never gets hurt, we're not even having this conversation about him getting another job.
So where do we put some accountability on Dak Prescott? Because I'm not saying that you're wrong. I'm not saying that it's fair to criticize Mike McCarthy. I'm not saying that he probably shouldn't have got fired. He probably should have got fired, in the wild card last year. I get all those points. But where do we put some of the accountability on your quarterback who's making the best contract or has the best contract in NFL history? He's supposed to be the equalizer, and he's not. He's never been, So no matter whether it was Kellen Moore calling plays and Mike McCarthy taking the back seat or Mike McCarthy taking full control of the offense, and obviously him having an MVP caliber season a couple years ago, Dak Prescott has not been showing up. That's the one constant. So where do we draw the line here? Because, whether they hire Deion Sanders, whether they hire Pete Carroll, whether they hire Bill Belichick, your quarterback who's making top of the line value is going to have to show up eventually come January. And I have no evidence to believe otherwise. That's going to happen.
No, and trust me, as soon as he gets healthy and if he starts playing poorly, agreed. No matter who they hire, it's going to be there. But
because I think we treat coaches a little bit unfairly. And I know I'm going to be talking a little bit broad here, but I do, because when we talk about the Commanders, and sure, Daniels is the truth. And clearly, with our eyes, we know that he's one of the best quarterbacks already in the National Football League. But Dan Quinn, we spared this man's name because he choked in big games. But a lot of that as a football team, and sure, he had a part to play in that. But look what he's doing right now. And now our tone is different. Nick Sirianni, the same thing. When everything is going well, we don't talk about him. We talk about Hurts. But when they winning, or losing, we want to hop on Nick Sirianni. So I think we treat coaches in the National Football League unfairly. A lot of people were saying Sean McDermott should have got fired last year, and look what's happening right now, with the Buffalo Bills. So a lot of it too is the players doing what they got to do, and clearly the Cowboys had fight in them. They decided to fight when they lost their quarterback, when they wanted to keep this guy job. That's when they decided to fight. So what happened to that fight earlier in the year when you had your quarterback, Dak Prescott? Because clearly that's not a Mike McCarthy thing. He didn't change his approach to coaching. It's them saying, okay, I want to fight for his job. So I'm going to have a game against Tampa where I'm going to be hitting hard because I want him to be re-signed. Well, where was that when Dak Prescott was your quarterback?
Yeah, I just think at the end of the day, the best thing about the NFL is it's a black and white league. It comes down to wins and losses. It doesn't matter who you are. And Mike McCarthy was the Cowboys coach for 5 years with one of the most talented rosters in the game, and he won one playoff game. Like, that's why.
And how many playoff games has Mike Tomlin won? And yet he got an extension in Pittsburgh.
No, for sure. Look, I said it earlier in the show. I would have moved on from Tomlin last year, but owners are different. I'm just saying personally what I would have done. And the thing about Mike McCarthy, say what you want about him, is he's been in two of the best spots for a coach to be in. He's coached prime Aaron Rodgers. He even had Brett Favre in the back end of his time in Green Bay. And he's coached the Cowboys with Dak Prescott, CeeDee Lamb, Micah Parsons, a very talented roster. And he won one playoff game in 5 years. That's why he got fired.
All right. And Zach, any last points before we end off this show?
I'm just very curious to see who these teams end up going with, because I feel like in a lot of instances, I have one guy in mind for each team. And if they don't end up going with that guy, I'm going to be pretty disappointed. Like, I think Ben Johnson is going to be the Raiders coach. Tom Brady is actually calling the Lions game this week. That will give him a great view of Ben Johnson and everything he's doing in Detroit. I think that's going to be their guy. I think that's why they fired Tom Telesco. I think the Jets should hire Brian Flores. I said that last week. They should interview him now that the Vikings are out. I think the Cowboys should hire Pete Carroll. Trying to think of the Bears should hire Todd Monken. I have some specific guys in reach for these jobs. And if they don't, I'm not trying to say I'm the end all be all, but I'm going to have to be talked into these hires if they don't end up going the way I think. And I'm curious to see what all these teams end up going with.
Yeah, real quickly, I agree with Ben Johnson to the Raiders. I think that's probably going to happen. The Jaguars, I go Mike McCarthy. And Chicago, I go Pete Carroll.
Let me ask you this. Better. For the Jaguars, who would you rather hire, McCarthy or Joe Brady?
Joe Brady.
I agree.
And ladies and gentlemen, that wraps up another episode of 99 Pod, recapping the wild card. And I'm looking forward to this upcoming weekend. The divisional round is going down. A lot of good games, a lot of good names, and we'll see who we gonna blame come Tuesday next week. Zach, it was a good show, and of course, I'm looking forward to the next.
Please like and subscribe for all the up-to-date content. You've been slinging shows left and right, slinging content left and right. Please don't miss anything. If you do, like, subscribe, leave a comment, or leave a question, something you may want to answer, something you may have. All ideas are great ideas. Nothing's a dumb question.